What's the worst example of bad parenting you've ever witnessed? At a movie theater, sitting in the 4th or 5th row with my friends. This was an R-rated movie. 2 kids, maybe 4 and 7 years old, are in the audience. They start playing and running back and forth at the front of the theater. The 4-year-old falls and starts to cry. The parent doesn't bother to get up. My friend finally went to console the child after a few minutes. The mother never bothered to get up. As a former theater worker, I can't tell you the rage I feel over this. As a frequent theater goer, I wholly understand. There were parents with their toddlers watching Deadpool. When did common sense become optional? An irate mother of a girl in a private school's music program made a big scene in front of the faculty and students because her daughter had not been selected to sing a solo in a school concert. The student had been very clear to the faculty that she didn't want the part, nor was her voice suited for it. Still, her overbearing mother insisted that she audition against her will. As a result, the girl was yanked out of the school she loved by her parents and embarrassed, all because the mother's ego required that her daughter be the shining star in front of others. I know someone who was raised this way by a single mother. The girl is now 35 and still acts like the world owes her something. It's a sad way to raise a child. The world owes you nothing. It was here first. Mark Twain. This was like a 5-year-old kid emptied a 4-pint bottle of milk all over the floor at the supermarket where I worked, and her mom just stood there and watched. To add to that, the child managed to place the empty bottle in the center of this now 2-meter wide puddle, and the mom just looked at me and said, "You got some cleaning up to do." Unbelievably rude. I would have handed her the mop and bucket, and made her pay for the milk. A little while ago, in a supermarket in London, a young girl was screaming at the cashier for asking for ID for the large bottle of alcohol she was buying. As the cashier continued to ask for ID, the girl opened her coat to reveal a large swollen belly and shouted, "Of course I'm old enough to drink alcohol, I'm pregnant." Holy hell, this is exactly like something you'd read in a joke book. I work at a movie theater. I remember once asking for ID for an R-rated movie about a girl who was about 16. You had to be 17 without a parent. She goes and gets her mother, who starts to lose it when I explain she has to accompany her daughter. She points at the girl's stomach and says she's going to be a mother. She can make her own choices about what movies to watch. I just stared at her. I was driving along my street when this 4 to 6-year-old kid rolls out of a driveway on a tricycle. I come to a stop and wait for him to get out of my way, as he seemed to be doing. His mother runs down the driveway and just starts screaming at me rather than get her kid out of the road. Another car comes up behind and without waiting just goes around, clipping the kid's tricycle and knocking him on the ground. And the lady just screams at me even more. She wouldn't stop or get out of the way. I finally just held my horn down till she gathered her kid up and got out of the way. Some people are really messed up when it comes to accepting responsibility. I was following a car through town one day and we were coming up on a green light. The property on the corner lot we were driving past had large stone fences, so you couldn't see cars coming in the cross street. Well, all of a sudden, when the car in front of me is like 20 feet from the intersection, a cyclist rides through his red light right out into the intersection. I'm thinking, this guy's screwed. But the car in front of me reacts instantly and slams in his brakes and manages to swerve around the back end of the cyclist's bike. After the commotion, we both make it through the green and get stopped at the next intersection. The cyclist sees this, changes course, and pedals fast to get up to the car in front of me. He starts punching the window of the car and spitting on it and kicks the door and then rides off. It was surreal. He made a huge mistake by running a red, and the only reason he wasn't seriously hurt was because of the good driving done by the guy I was following. So naturally, he proceeds to try and assault the guy that saved him months of recovery. In the waiting room at the doctor's, listen to a father and son converse for 30 minutes. They would ask each other questions about geography, history, and the universe in a natural, not interrogatory way. It was clear the father was remarkably knowledgeable and that he enjoyed conversing with his son. It soon became apparent that this was far from their first conversation of this type. The son had an above-average understanding of the world and a mature and sharp way of thinking. Listening to them was a serene experience. It put some things into perspective. There are more people like this around me, and no matter the bleak situation in my country or worldwide, it is possible to lead these beautiful, fulfilling lives. What? You wanted the worst example of bad parenting. Everyone else is posting some pretty good examples. God damn, I hope I can be this type of parent. When the time comes, I'd love to be the type of parent that my kids respect for moral and educational guidance. You can be. Children are people. People that want to be understood and want to understand. Always answer their questions. No question is dumb. Not necessarily the worst, but depressing in some ways. Overheard a woman tell her child in a condescending manner, Don't be stupid, lizards don't lay eggs. Whilst in the reptile house at London Zoo during a zookeeper talk. They set up a wedding fund instead of a college fund for their daughter, and told her that somewhat frequently. She ended up getting an MRS and had a $250K wedding before never working in her field. They essentially told her, "You're going to be a housewife and it's futile to develop yourself as a person," from the time that she was 4. The concept of MRS is so weird to me. I'm in the middle of my undergraduate, and with the amount my parents and I pay for tuition, textbooks, transport, plus all the time I spent studying, I can't imagine going only for the purpose of finding a man. My parents want me to get married. They want grandbabies, and are from a country where arranged marriage is the norm. But even they are saying, find a career first. When I was a cashier, this mom came in with her son's piggy bank. The kid was with her and must have only been about 6 years old. He wanted to buy a candy bar with his money, but the mom told him no, that his money was going to help support the family. She then proceeded to buy a 6-pack of drinks and some cigarettes with the money while the kid watched. The poor boy had tears in his eyes the whole time. I refused service to her and the manager ended up ringing her up. She was paying with mostly pennies and nickels, and while she was distracted, I saw the boy walk over to the candy rack and wipe the tears from his eyes. I asked him what was wrong and he told me it had taken him 3 years to save that money, but his mom didn't have a job so she took it from him. I bought him the candy bar he wanted and gave him a bunch of quarters for the gumball toy machines. His mom saw him trying to get one of those sticky hands from the machine and then took all the quarters he had from him. I'm a teacher. The examples of bad parenting I could give are staggering. The worst examples end up with me calling Child Protective Services, like the 14-year-old who left school to play designated driver for a wasted parent, or any number of things. Day-to-day normal bad, though, is any parent who talks crap in front of their child. I don't care who you're bad-mouthing, don't do it in front of your child. All that comes to school, all of it. I worked as a cover supervisor in a school for a couple of years, and the crap I experienced was insane. I work with 13 to 19-year-olds, so they already had enough issues managing normal everyday teenage struggles, but the things some of the parents did to add to their burdens were disgusting. I ended up leaving to work with adult learners, mainly because my degree is in a subject not taught at the school level, but it was a relief in a way not having to watch these kids suffer. I still lose sleep worrying about some of them. Teachers are so underappreciated, and no one seems to consider what you see and have to deal with. Well done for being a protective influence for those kids. Average guy here. Thank you, and to every teacher, child services worker, and good parent reading this comment. You are all well and truly beyond underappreciated, and have to not only bear witness, but to deal with the consequences of issues in the community the rest of us prefer not to even think of as existing. So many times, despite having a very difficult school life and not really engaging so many times, I think about and regret not expressing my sincere gratitude and appreciation, not just for the way my teachers treated me, but for doing what they do. If you're still at that age where you have school teachers, or know someone who does, please, 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 for the sake of society, do a very little thing to make a very big impact, and go express, even with a simple card, your appreciation for your teachers. My sister was worried that her 7-year-old son wasn't at the level as the other kids, and considered holding him back a year. She didn't end up going through with it, but my brother-in-law found this development super funny and kept openly mocking his own son until his own son started crying his eyes out and needing a hug. I was absolutely horrified that his own father was acting like a schoolyard bully. Not a parent in the case I saw, but a grandparent. I used to nanny 2 kids under 3. The boy was very shy and cautious just by nature, and it took time for him to get used to new things and people. His grandparents lived an hour away and would sometimes babysit, but of course, a 2-year-old doesn't really remember people they only see once every couple of months. One day, the grandparents came over to babysit and brought a new kiddie pool. The boy had played in a kiddie pool as a baby the previous summer, but of course, he doesn't remember that, he's 2. So the grandparents set up their gift, fill it with water, and I got the kids changed. I'd always stay an hour or so after the grandparents arrived to make sure the kids were comfortable with them first. Grandpa was so excited for the little boy to see the gift, but the little boy wasn't sure about it, because he's basically never seen a pool before. I started getting him used to it, put his sisters in, dipped my toes in, encouraged him to put his hand out and feel the water, etc. It was taking him time, but he was warming up. Well, Grandpa ran out of patience. He grabbed the kid and just plopped him into the pool. The little boy immediately started panicking and crying, and then Grandpa started mocking him for crying about a little water. I took the kiddo inside and told his parents what happened. Scaring the crap out of the shy toddler is pretty crappy, but mocking a baby for crying when he's scared? That crap is foul. I like you. If I would afford a nanny, I would hire you. I was in a department store and this couple was shopping with their 3 kids. The boy child, who looked to be about 8, picked up a hairbrush and smacked his sister, who started crying. The mom said, "Alex doesn't do that. That isn't nice." The boy replied, "Screw you." The mom, still ignoring her crying daughter, says, "Come on, Alex, don't say that." To which Alex then hits his mother with the hairbrush. The mom bends down and says, "Alex, that really isn't nice." Alex responds by slapping his mother across the face and saying, "Screw you." The mom simply says, "Alex, that wasn't necessary," and kept on shopping. The dad just watched all of this like it wasn't his problem and eventually just walked away. I'm 51% sure that if that was my son, I would either emancipate him or put him up for adoption. Some kind of legal separation. If a kid is that rotten that early, he's going to be in prison before his 18th birthday. Yeah, there's something else going on with little Alex. A couple of years ago, I was on a shuttle in Yosemite. A little girl approximately age 10 had this nasty tight cough. Being in the medical field, I was concerned and asked if she had asthma. The father answered in a curt and rather annoyed tone that she was fine. They were doing controlled burns in the park, which was causing my own asthma to act up. The girl was not fine as she was clearly struggling to breathe. I bit my tongue, but to this day, I wish I had somehow persuaded the father to get her help. When I was around that age, I had a night where I felt like I couldn't breathe enough. Just couldn't catch my breath. My mom had me stand outside and then had my dad drive me to a lake so I could catch my breath, I guess. He kept complaining to me that if I couldn't breathe, I should go to a hospital. I was like, I don't really have a choice in this and I'm scared that I can't breathe. Had to go and get diagnosed with asthma on my adult own. Growing up and not being able to breathe sucked. All the adults explained it to me as being fat. A woman on the bus told her approximately 6-year-old son to tell an approximately 11-year-old schoolgirl to move out of the way, but referred to the girl as that fat cow. I lost my crap, probably displaying pretty bad parenting skills myself as I was taking my son to school, but I couldn't let it pass. I don't think that what you did was bad. I mean, losing your cool is not ideal, but you showed your son that you are willing to stand up for a total stranger when they are being mistreated. Not only that, but that girl was probably thankful someone had the balls to stand up for her. A mother let her kid play in the stream of wood chips coming out of a wood chipper and yelled at the guy who was cutting down trees because he told the kid to get away from it. She was on her phone the whole time. There could have been nails and stones in that wood that could have hit the kid, but nope. It was the bloke's fault for chipping wood and not letting the kid play in it. Not to mention the kid could catch a high-speed splinter in the eye. Doubt I'll be the worst example in this thread, but while sat outside a noodle shop with a friend and my 3 dogs, a mom and dad went inside to order and left their 2 children to run around outside and come up and hit, slap, and poke and scream at my dogs. The children only giggled and ran off when I told them to leave us alone, and would then repeat the whole thing half a minute later. The parents' only reaction was to occasionally glance outside and smile as though it was something cute and their kids weren't terrorizing my previously napping dogs. Control your children. My nephew, who was an awful 4-year-old crap, kept poking and then running away from my 100-pound dog. Kept doing it after I told him to stop, and his grandmother lazily half-assed told him no. So finally, I stooped down and told him, if you keep teasing my dog, he's eventually going to chase you and knock you down. When he does, it's going to hurt. A lot, and when you're crying, I won't help you. He straightened up real quick. One of my friends, when she was a wee one, 3 or 4, she went to pull the cat's tail. Her mother and sister warned her, if you do that, you're going to get scratched and it'll be your own fault. Cue pulling tail, scratch, and I told you so. She never did it again. I once saw a mother buy a drink for her kid. The kid was roughly 2 to 3 years old and she bought him a drink because he likes it. The boy's name was Barney Gumble. My parents telling me I'm the source of all their problems and arguments until this day, only to see my parents do the same to my younger brother. Also name-calling, very mentally abusive. They feed their kid with only McDonald's fries. Literally just that, every meal of every day. This has been going on since the girl could eat solid food, and now she's 12. She doesn't eat anything, just McDonald's fries. Apparently, her body rejects other food items. It's so ridiculous. I am hoping it's not real, but it sure is. That sounds like fantasy. People need more than McDonald's fries to survive, especially for 12 years. I know, I wonder if she really eats anything else. But from what we know, all she eats is fries. But yeah, with such a poor diet, the kid is obviously malnourished. She would throw tantrums if she couldn't get her fries, so the parents would just give it to her. In a grocery store, and I see a probably 5-year-old walk across the apple display, taking a bite out of each apple on the bottom row, looking around and then placing the apple back with a bite out of view. I stood there with my jaw dropped, waiting for her parents to do something. Finally, the woman saw me, looked at the kid and said, "Mija, no!" and promptly turned around and continued to let her do it. I was in a store the other day, and there was like an 8-year-old with his own cart. Parents are nowhere to be seen. You could hear this kid through the whole store just yelling constantly. Not words, just, "Ah!" I see him about 3 times while shopping. The first time he is laying in an aisle just yelling. The second time I see him in a different aisle, his cart is just parked across it, and there is a guy trying to get past, so he needs to move the cart. Third time I see him, he is riding a cart and crashes into an old lady. Keep in mind, this is all during constant yelling. It was crazy. I then kind of watched him for a bit, and I followed him around for a minute to see if I could find the people that owned him, so I could share an opinion. But he rode his cart past the checkouts, and I decided, screw it, and got in line. I was buying a Nintendo DS game. Another 5-year-old child was here begging her mom to buy one game. She eventually accepted after begging enough. Then this kid proceeded to ask for another game. Mother said, "No, you chose this one first. We get this one." But the kid was begging. Eventually, after enough begging, he got her to go, "Okay, you pick this one instead." But the kid was still begging because he wanted the first game he chose too. It's one or the other, we're not getting both. Mother's voice started building. Kid went going back and forth between the games he wanted. Eventually, the mother sighed and proceeded without another word to buy both games. I have taught my 3-year-old that he can get something at a store some of the times. Generally, if he's been on good behavior, he gets to choose what it is, but he only gets one item. If he chooses something new, he has to put back the other item. Once you give in, there is no going back. They learn so fast. We do that too. Generally, it's a spur of the moment, so we can't even anticipate it, and once he picks, it's done. I've also had him throw a fit for candy while I'm checking out, with it where I still purchased it and told him it was mine now because he screamed at me. Never cried about candy again. Note, I didn't eat it in front of him. I just told him, "You're acting up and you're not getting it." I was at a family reunion a few years back. Me and my friend, who I brought along, decided to go swimming in the hotel pool. We were swimming and this little girl tried playing with us, so we played with her. After a while, my friend told me, "I don't think anyone is watching her." So we asked her and she said no. This girl said she was 5 and she was with her brothers. I went to the front desk and told them there was a little girl unsupervised in the pool and told them her name, and they called the family. We waited with the girl for a few hours and even fed her. Finally, someone did come and get her, and I remember this exactly. "Are you Paul's kids?" the man said, and they responded with, yes, and they left. The sad part is the dad couldn't be bothered to watch her come get his 5-year-old kid and her like 8-year-old brothers. Probably also couldn't be bothered to have that whole "don't go anywhere with strangers" talk. A mother I knew had a kid who fell off a piece of playground equipment and fractured his pelvis. I saw the kid about 5 years later. He walked with a pronounced limp, his whole body twisting around as he took steps. From what I heard, his mother stopped taking him to the physical therapy appointments the city was paying for because they were too inconvenient and he'll be fine. And while the 5-year-old was recovering, made him run errands all over their apartment instead of rest and heal up, because she was too lazy to get up off the couch and get her own snacks and drinks out of the kitchen. When I was a child, my mother would load us into the car when it was nearly out of gas. She'd drive for miles with the gas tank light on and force us to pick out bridges that we were going to live under, telling us that when the car ran out of gas, that's where we would stop and have to live. She spent the entire drive telling us that we were nothing but a burden to her, and she would be happy if she didn't have to pay for us kids. My parents were divorced, and my father was an alcoholic that had died after the divorce. Our nearest family was 800 miles away, and we had no family or other support. My sisters and I would sob quietly in the back seat as my mom ran through her spiel. Then when she thought she'd terrified us enough, she'd fill up the car and take us home. I still get mildly panicked when the gas light comes on when I'm in the car. And now for something completely different. Some years ago, I was at an airport and a woman was traveling with 2 young children. She was at the terminal next to mine, and their flight was delayed. Everyone was frustrated and the kids were starting to get restless. Sensing this, she sits down between them and loudly says, "Tell me a story!" This is something I think that they had done countless times before, because the kids seemed to know what was up. One of them starts with, "Well, there were 2 kids at the airport," and the mom excitedly asks, "What were they doing at the airport?" The little one pipes up with, "Fighting dragons!" And so the mom asks more questions about whether they found the dragons immediately or if they had to search for them, and what they did on their search, and what they were wearing to fight the dragons, and if the dragons were friendly but misunderstood, and so on and so forth. The kids told the story, but the mom kept making them give more details and suggested outcomes. This woman kept 2 small children at an airport, plus all of the hard-eyed onlookers and listeners completely spellbound for at least an hour. They just talked quietly and told stories. It didn't just entertain the kids, but it made them use their imagination, and it softened the mood of everyone around them. I didn't hear if the adventurers got the dragons because my plane started to board, but was one of the most graceful bits of parenting I've ever seen. I wanted to give that woman a hug. Me and my fiance, 22 and 21, live up at college with her little sister. Me and the fiance wanted to get a dog this year, so we searched and searched for a good deal on a place that would let us have the dogs that we wanted. The entire time we were searching, her sister was berating us for not signing a lease with a place that won't allow dogs. She is basically the type of person who thinks that if you don't do what she wants, then you're the worst human being ever. Anyway, we find a place and get our dogs. 2 months later, after we move in, the little sister starts saying she wants to get a dog. I say hell no. After about a week of her complaining to her parents that she wants a dog, her mom gives in and lets her get one. I stand my ground and will not allow it to stay in our house because we signed a lease only agreeing to me and my fiance's 2 dogs, plus it's too small of a house for 3 big dogs. So she goes and picks out a puppy at the local animal shelter, and the next weekend she takes it home to her parents to, and as she puts it, keep at their house because I'm an ass and threatened to take it back to the shelter. The dog has now lived at their parents' house for 8 months with little to no interaction with her, but she still says it's her dog. As I'm sure you can tell, this is a spoiled brat who has never been told no before. I have many more stories if anyone wants to hear them. Once went with my husband to a house owned by one of his coworkers. Their son picked up a toy gun, said, "Watch this," put the barrel in his mouth and pull the trigger. I know it was a toy, but damn man, this crap screwed me up. The dad just laughed and told him it didn't count if it didn't go boom. I still think about that crap. That is so fricked up. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have an example to share, please feel free to do so in the comments section below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when we upload our next video. For more great videos like this one, please be sure to stop by the channel. Thanks again, and see you next time!